Oh, folks, welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show. We're doing a pre-record, but we got something coming for you live. We've got a fantastic guest coming up, and this is for November the 23rd, 2022, every Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. We've got a great guest for you, and of course, we always got Bob starting off in the beginning. Don't let them fool you. You got to stay engaged. You got to stay involved, man. Don't let them fool you. Oh, yes. Let's go with this for a little bit. I think I need to add a little more volume to this. Can you hear it? Okay, I can hear it. Oh, yeah. I'm so glad that you're here, folks. As a Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show is about to come at you with the same old thing we talk about every time we talk about it when we come in. We talk about what, folks? Of course, you know what it's going to be. Thank you for being here. We're going to talk about voting rights. Yes, we're going to talk about voting rights as we do every week because it's so important. It is the foundation. When I say the foundation of our democracy, without voting rights, you don't have anything. You can't elect local candidates. You can't elect state candidates. You can't elect federal candidates. You can't get your ideas and the things that you want to get done. And that's why I'm here with my uniform on, march on for voting rights. I'm going to move the screen a little bit. Yep. This is not MSNBC. This is just me, Mark Kennedy, chair of the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show, live coming at you. And so happy to see you today on November the 23rd, almost there on Thanksgiving Day. So, folks, listen, I'm going to start as I always do, running my mouth, going from thing to thing. And one of the things I want to tell you is, guess what? The COVID thing is not over yet. We're still dealing with COVID. So listen, if you haven't had your vaccination, get your vaccinations. Get both shots. Get your booster. Encourage your friends and folks to get boosters. Mask up when you need to mask up. Do what you need to do whenever you need to do it. And of course, this is live internet. I got my wife over here who's sneaking in, writing a message over here. Hey, baby, how you doing?
I think you said today was November 23rd. Today's the 23rd.
This is a pre-record.
Okay. Then it's the 23rd. Okay. All right. I was just trying to help you out.
Oh, so she's going to make me edit this. Okay, but that's all right. I'm not going to edit it because all this sort of live stuff is all good. So we've got a fantastic, my wife, beautiful woman, married to her for 28 years. And when she sees me doing something wrong, she's going to say it. But anyway, folks, I was talking to you about COVID. COVID is not quite over. We still are dealing with the after effects of it being out there. There's still a couple of hundred Americans, U.S. citizens dying daily. That was the last number coming out of that I had checked anyway, coming out of Health and Human Services and the CDC and all that. So if you have any comorbidities, if you have any sort of people who you know who've been exposed, who are, trying to get by it or had long COVID, you still need to make sure you're protecting yourself. We want you here to vote. We want you here to take care of your family and friends and your businesses. And we just want you here. So we don't want to lose you sooner than what you ought to be gone from this beautiful place we call Earth. Anyway, folks, so let me go in and tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. I'm just going to go right in. And today has been a busy day. I've been running around getting stuff out of storage. I've been running around meeting with other Democratic organizations, getting ready for these Christmas parties, for, holiday parties, because everybody, is not Christmas, but, I'm Christmas guys. I call Christmas, but really holiday parties, which includes the entire holiday season, no matter how you worship, even if you don't worship, it's still the holidays. Getting ready to start, on Thursday, the 24th, which is Thanksgiving Day, which people call it a lot of other things. I'm not going to get into that right now, but you know what? Just as all this prep, these parties all happen at the beginning of the year. So let me go from there, talking about what's been going on with my day, to let you know why hopefully you're tuning in to see something about what we're doing. here today. And I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into the voting rights thing. And then I'm going to bring on our exciting guests for you. We got a local person who's doing some fantastic things locally here in Northern Virginia. And I want to make sure we talk a little bit about this gentleman and give him a good introduction. We'll bring him in about 15 minutes or so after I talk about what? Voting rights. That's right. Voting rights are fundamental to a democracy. And until we get voting rights legislation passed on a federal level and passed in every state, because right now there's a strategy, as you know, folks, people are passing voting rights laws on a state level because they're worried about making sure that, okay, we don't have this national voting rights law. Well, we're going to get it done in states that are doing a great job on a state level. And that means that's a fantastic thing to avoid a strategy of people attacking voting rights at our highest court. Yes, because that's exactly how we lost them. And if you've been paying attention, you will know that they didn't just disappear. Supreme Court took them away, took away the pre-clearance thing, which means that every state could now decide to do everything on their own any way they wanted to do, essentially taking us backwards into the 60s, prior to the 60s and later. So now you have this sort of voter suppression laws that are happening all over the country, because instead of there being one standard, there are multiple standards. And that is hard for people to actually cast their vote in a democracy and make sure everybody has the same opportunity to cast their vote on a 50-state basis and all the other territories of the United States where people are eligible to vote. So I like to talk about that. I need to let people that they need to understand that, because not only are we trying to get more people to vote, well, we can't get more people to vote if they're making it harder for you to vote. And who benefits from that? Well, who benefits from that is the people who want to see status quo. They don't want to see this country be the best it can be. A more perfect union, as we call it. And how you have a more perfect union is you get in more voices from across the entire country, making sure that the United States and our governmental bodies at a local, a state, and a federal level look like what the country looks like. And it expresses the sort of thing that the country expresses. Yep, that's right. I said it. Anyway, folks, so let me go into what I usually do. And I'm going to go in first, and we always start with what I call the trinity, the trifecta, whatever you want to call it, the three-legged stool of the basis of our civil rights in this country. And I need to start with the first one. And the first one I talk about is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yes, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, and it prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin. It provided provisions for the Civil Rights Act to also forbade discrimination on the basis of sex when it came to hiring and promoting and firing people. So basically, when you see the images that are on there, you see people down there protesting, having to walk into, police dogs literally attacking people. You see the middle picture with Lyndon Baines Johnson and other politicians. Of course, the iconic picture there of MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., when that legislation got passed in 1964. And furthest picture on your right there is really just kids from various different communities on their bus together, all enjoying the civil rights that this country has to offer. That basically, how do we get there? Some people might say, I'm going to go, I don't want to go too far off the beaten track, because I want you to meet our special guest and I want to save time for him and fit it in an hour. But civil rights were put into place because the rights that were guaranteed all Americans in the Constitution, we ended up fighting the American Revolution War. And then, of course, eventually we went into the Civil War to guarantee people their rights as full citizens in this country and the laws that got passed then. But then even after that, compromise of 1877, all those rights and voting rights are taken away. And even then, it was only for African-American men. Even back then, women could not vote. So it was really just getting people who didn't have the right to the franchise after the Civil War and after having to fight for that in this country and winning that right. It all disappeared in 1877 in the compromise. And then, of course, there was another 80, 90 years of Jim Crow. Jim Crow means that's when basically southern states and other states that are outside of the South were basically having laws that forbid people to vote by having all sorts of voter suppression laws and also all sorts of tactics that were extra legal and things where they're actually physically attacking people and forcing them to flee the country, to flee these areas if they did vote. So the Civil Rights Act was very important in 1964. There was a lot leading up to that. So I try to tell people, a lot of people gave their lives in this country in order to have that, from American Revolution to the Civil War, to World War I, World War II, through Jim Crow, to the Vietnam War, right up to present day. But I'll tell you later why that suddenly went away. Well, let's talk about the other piece. And the other thing is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So we said, well, people need the civil rights so people can just basically live their lives without being accosted. Everybody's got the same thing. But the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was needed because Jim Crow and all the things I just mentioned to you about that was stopping people from voting, even though that they had that right. So that act was signed into law on August the 6th, 1965 by President Lyndon Baines Johnson, again, LBJ law, along with all the people who fought for that and protested about it, which you can see in the pictures there. Then, of course, you see again Lyndon Baines Johnson in the middle of that picture right there with I think that's Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King. And then on the far end, you also see John Lewis, who almost lost his life on the Edmund Pettus Bridge as they protested about not having voting rights laws. So basically, it outlawed what the 1965 Act did. It outlawed discriminating voting practices that had been adopted in many southern states in the Civil War, including voter suppressing things like literacy tests as a prerequisite to voting, all kind of things. And really, after this pre-clearance piece of the 1965 Voting Rights Act was taken away, that's when you started seeing all the things that used to happen in the 50s start to happen in a more progressive way, which people tend to call it Jim Crow Esquire. So they don't exactly say the same thing, but the practical effects are the same thing. And I'll explain a little bit about that later. Okay, so let's go into the last leg of that three-legged stool here for civil rights in this country. The Fair Housing Act of 1968 expanded on previous acts and prohibited the discrimination concerning the sale, the rental, and the financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, sex, and later was amended to include handicapped people and family status, whether you were married or single, or more recently in LGBTQ type marriages. Basically, Title VIII was the act, was also known as the Fair Housing Act when you hear people talk about Title VIII. And this is basically what that was. And you're saying to yourself, wow, all that happened in the 60s? Yes, it happened in the 60s. I was born in 1960, and look at me, I'm all gray, gray and white, probably closer to white than gray. So just to let you know, this is contemporary stuff where we're not talking about 1960, in the 1800s. It's me. I'm talking to you. I'm still alive. I'm 62. When I was born, if I was 18 in 1960, I wouldn't have been able to vote. Well, by the way, in 1960, I think it was still 21. I would not, as an African-American, been able to freely cast my ballot. And certainly my father, who was born in 1936, who was still alive, he was unable to do that, even as he was a veteran serving the United States for almost 30 years in the Air Force and a Vietnam vet, among other vets, including people like my Uncle Marcus, who is a colonel in the Army fighting in the Korean War, including my Uncle Tommy, who was a Coast Guard Navy guy, who was also that. And all these people were people I knew in my life. My dad is still alive. He's 86. Okay. I knew my grandmother before she died in 1908. We're not talking back in the Roman emperor times. We're talking in my lifetime. They are trying to change that. So what I try to get people to understand is this is not ancient history. This is right now. Let me move into the next thing real quick as I talk. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about HR 4. Not HR 1. I meant to say HR 4. Now, HR 4 is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. But basically, I talked about that earlier. Remember I talked about that pre-clearance piece? Well, what that meant was the pre-clearance is the process of receiving pre-approval from the Department of Justice or U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. before any legal changes are made that would affect voting in any of the states. It was called pre-clearance. That was the piece that the Supreme Court in 2013 removed. 2013, folks. I didn't say 1913, 2013. The same people who are on the court now removed the pre-clearance piece out of it. So now what that meant was, okay, we don't have pre-clearance. And what did pre-clearance do? Basically, it said, if you're going to make any changes to voting rules, it has to happen 180 days before an election. It also looked at the past history of certain voting districts in certain states and made sure that they were unable to do the voter suppression things that they did in the past. And what this voting rights, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act does, it basically modernizes the Voting Rights Act for determining discrimination in states and localities. It also declares, again, voting rules have to happen at least 180 days before an election. And it also is giving the federal government more authority to send in federal observers to observe jurisdictions for potential risk of discrimination at the polls during voting. And you all knew what kind of really interesting things that went on this past election in various different states, because once that pre-clearance piece was removed, that meant each state could do all kind of voter suppression activities. And what are those, you might say? Well, they didn't come right out and say you can't vote because you're a woman. You can't vote because you're LGBT or you're from this particular community or that particular community. You're an African American. What they would do was they'd go to certain communities and say, there's 20 polls at this particular polling station, and this polling station is right in the neighborhood where a certain group of people are voting. What we're going to do is just close down all those polling stations, and we're going to move that neighborhood polling station 15 miles away, which is going to take people an hour to get there. And then not only are we going to do that, we're going to say in areas that are really, really heavily populated, where there are machines, you may need 30 polling machines in those spaces. They're going to say, we're only going to have 5. So therefore, what's the practical effect? It takes people a longer term in time to vote. They have jobs to go to. It makes it harder for people to get to the polls. And I just named some. And as far as the different sort of IDs, different sort of things required, there was no uniformity concerning effects to voting across the entire nation and U.S. territories. So now that meant that people have to jump through a lot of different hoops in order for them to just cast a vote, which should be made simple. And I will want to, tap myself on the back. I'm a Virginian and I'm a Democrat. We passed great laws in Virginia. We're one of the most progressive. We want everybody to vote that's eligible to vote. We want to make it as easy as possible. Absentee voting or voting by mail, as it's known, we have very long periods of times for people to just basically fill out their ballot, mail it in. For people to vote, that goes on for 45 days. We have a number of different sort of ID, which is perfectly acceptable in Virginia and various different states that don't have voter suppression laws. We have plenty of polls in neighborhoods and voting machines in those polls or areas where people can vote. Matter of fact, we made it so easy for people to vote. We got voted out of office as Democrats. We lost the governor's office. We lost the lieutenant governor's office. We lost the attorney general and barely held on to the Senate and just a few votes behind because we also lost the House of Delegates. And that's okay, because what I believe, like most Americans who believe in democracy believe, is turn your people out to vote. If you got a good argument, people believe it, they're going to come out, they're going to vote for you, and that's it. No hanky-panky during the voting process, no hanky-panky after the voting process, and it's completely nonpartisan and open to everyone to participate with the rules that we have, not tweaking the rules so one thing is better for one group as opposed to the other, so people can have people representing them that haven't really done the work and have the receipts. They fix the system in a way that it makes it harder for people to vote. But guess what? We still didn't do too bad on November 8th. We didn't get where we need to be, but it's a challenge. Okay, so I'm running out of time here, and I've got a guest waiting in the wings. So let me go to the next one. I'm sorry, and get to it real quick. And that is the HR 1, which is the For the People's Act. By the way, HR 4 was passed by the United States Congress, the House of Representatives, and then we also had the For the People Act to expand access to voting to the ballot box even more so, and to reduce big money in politics, to strengthen ethics rules for public servants. And, it had things like the pre-clearance thing and added that into there, which the Supreme Court took out in 2013, and other finance reforms, election security reforms, helping states to get more voting machines and processes for auditing and securing results, and automatic same-day voting, and 2 weeks of early voting at a minimum. All these sorts of things were in HR 1 and in HR 4. They were passed by the Democrats who were controlling the House of Representatives, and they got passed. However, the Senate bill didn't get passed. And I talk about the Senate bill. We had a little trouble there. A couple other folks, for whatever reason, I won't get into it, but just to make it real quick, the Senate did try to pass a bill, which was Senate Bill 2747, the Freedom to Vote Act, which basically incorporated most of those things that were in HR 1 and HR 4, and it had a few other things into which I've talked about. But because I'm short on time, I'm not going to go into all that. But I didn't want to short shrift the Senate. I want to say they tried to get something done, right? They tried best they could. It didn't work out. So what we needed to do is elect more senators. Elect more senators who are going to vote for the voting rights bill. And I don't care where those votes come from, as long as they vote for it, because it's not a Democratic thing. It is not a Republican thing. It's not an independent thing. It is an American thing. It is a Democratic thing. If I said the wrong thing, let me. It is not a Republican thing. It is not a Democrat thing as far as parties go. It is a democracy thing. If you believe in the Bill of Rights in this country, if you believe in the Constitution of the United States, then that means everybody has unfettered, fair access to vote, because we have a representative democracy, as Ben Franklin said, if you can keep it. That means you got to do something if you want to keep it. Folks, I'm going to stop talking and I'm not even going to go into the rest of the stuff I talk about. I want to talk about real quick. What's your call to action? Call to action real quick. I'm going to go really fast. Call your congressman, tell your congressman you know about HR 1, you know about HR 4, you know about the other bill, and you want to make sure that they get that bill passed. It gets to the president's desk for signature. That's your call to action. You got great tools out there. You got activism apps known as 5 Calls. It works not only on a Google phone or an Android, it also is available for an Apple phone or iOS. So, went through it real quick. Now I'm going to introduce my guest because we need time to talk. This guy is fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and bring his information up so you know exactly who I'm talking about. And folks, I am talking about Albert Vega. And he is our guest for today. And Albert's been doing some fantastic stuff. And I just want people to kind of know who Albert Vega is. Albert Vega, he grew up in El Paso, Texas, and he obtained his bachelor's degree from the University of Texas, El Paso. I added the El Paso piece because I guess it's a little different. If y'all from Texas, y'all know, in 2000. He later went on to obtain his master's. Yes, I said his master's degree. He's got his master's, and he not only got his master's, but he didn't stop there. He went on to get even more stuff. Yes, more stuff. That means he's got a PhD. He's a doctor. So Albert went on to get his PhD, and he got his master's and his PhD from Purdue University, the Purdue University, in 2002 and 2010. During grad school, Albert did different things to really start his own first business, which was in photography, where he hired himself out as for photography events, and he converted digital cameras for infrared photography. He's an engineer, by the way, and he'll tell you more about that. And he won a couple of awards for that. After academia, or after he finished school, Albert went to work for an engineering and scientific consulting firm, and he worked a project that placed him in Afghanistan, helping soldiers with everyday problems that they faced. In 2015, Albert co-founded Building Momentum, a company based on training that gives people the permission and confidence to use new tools to solve problems. The company, again, is Building Momentum, which has trained more than 6,000 plus Marines, soldiers, airmen, sailors, and STEM teachers, science, technology, the E. What does the E stand for again? Anyway, Albert will tell us. But anyway, STEM is all technical stuff, okay? I'm screwing it up. 62, I don't remember everything. Yeah, don't hate me. Don't be a hater because I don't remember everything. So, but STEM, I know you've heard the term STEM teachers, which is science and math teachers, and corporate leaders went on to use the various problem-solving techniques and interesting technologies that actually impact the lives of themselves and the people who live around them. So I'm telling this guy, Albert Vega, is pretty impressive. And you think I'd be talking about a guy who's my age and got white and gray hair. No, this is a young guy. You heard those years he graduated. He is not an older guy. He is a younger guy. He's got plenty of time left to be in the business. And man, I just want to make sure, as I always do at the voting polls, man, I love to clap people in and I love to clap people off. So without further ado, folks, we want to bring on Albert Vega. Let me add him to the screen. Albert, you hear the folks out there clapping for you. He is going to be an interesting interview. And I just want people to know Albert is getting it done. Okay.
Mark, thank you.
Hi, Albert. How are you, man?
Good. Thank you so much for that gracious introduction. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, we gotta pump you up a little bit, but you deserve it, man. You've got an impressive biography, and I'm just really interested in hearing more about you because I know you're a local guy right here in Northern Virginia. So you're in my neck of the woods, but this is the point when I stopped running my mouth at 7:41 into the show. I should have stopped earlier. I'm turning it over to you. Tell us more. Tell the viewers and the listeners about Albert Vega, man. Let us know a little more about you.
Well, I mean, you hit the intro, pretty much hit it. Spent a lot of time in school, probably spent too much time in school. Grew up in Texas, decided to, I don't know, it just feels like the path was odd and interesting. You know, even took a time between master's and PhD and traveled to Houston and sold cameras and developed film for almost a semester. Just needed a break. Lived in Los Angeles, lived in Indiana, lived in El Paso, lived in Houston, lived in Afghanistan for about a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the path to get here was interesting.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting path. Well, so basically, when you founded your own company, what year did you found that company and why did you do it?
Well, we founded it really we didn't do anything until about 2015, but we started in about 2014. And the reason why we wanted to do that is because we saw that when we were sending other engineers and scientists to Afghanistan to become problem solvers and help soldiers there, you know, just solve everyday problems. Before we sent them down in that situation, we wanted to prep them. So we came up with this really intense 1 week long class because we also wanted to understand whether we could manage this person across the globe. But at the end of it, we saw this confidence grow. We saw an ability, like a mentality that I can solve any problem. And we just realized, why are we only doing this for engineers and scientists? We should be doing this for the soldier. We should be doing this for the Marine. We should be doing this for the STEM teachers so they can turn around and generate their own STEM curriculum. We can do this for corporate leaders just to understand whether there's companies functioning as it should. And does it really understand how some of its workers are working? And we just want to put more tools in people's hands, see them be better problem solvers, and go from there.
Well, that's kind of interesting. So is this like an app or is it a process? How, I mean, as a small business person, how do you guys like federal contractors, how do you actually apply those sort of things you just talked about?
We definitely are contractors, but we do it in person. We travel. We go local. We go across the globe. We've done training in Quantico. We've also done training in Camp Lejeune. We've done training in Pendleton. We've done training in 29 Palms in California. We've done training in Japan. We've done training in Kuwait, Qatar. We're willing to go anywhere. We just want to be able to apply these classes to anybody. And our main class that we like to call, that's our biggest seller, is Innovation Bootcamp. It's a week-long class where we teach people how to use 3D printers, computer-aided design, welding, laser cutters, programming, microcontrollers. And then at the end of the week, we wrap it up in a capstone project that just pulls from every little bit of that technology that we've been using and puts it in a real-world scenario. And again, for some of our Department of Defense friends, we kind of aim for them. For our STEM teachers, we make it just a little bit different. So we tailor the capstone, and then really you see people who, I can never use a 3D printer. I can never program. We've seen Marines go from 0 programming experience to I've made my own autonomous sumo fighting robot in less than 24 hours. Our 3D printing challenge is you need to build a bridge, and it's bigger than what can fit on the bed of your 3D printer. So they have to get creative, and they have to piece it together in different pieces. Oh, and there's a time limit. And when we first started doing this challenge, we were just putting weights in a bag to break bridges. It got so good. The Marines got so good at building 3D printed bridges that we had to invent a new way to break bridges. Now we have a hydraulic press that crushes bridges and senses how much weight. And I think the leader is somewhere over 800 pounds. 800 pounds. It's absolutely nuts.
Well, so you got your undergraduate degree in what field of study?
I trained for electrical engineering, and all the other degrees also were in the area of electrical.
So you're a PhD electrical engineering guy, which is pretty technical. And your thought of doing this let's talk about the Marines for a second, or any of the soldiers or military folks. Do they actually take this once they go through this training and apply it to something they're doing in the field, whether it be in the theater or whether it be, stateside or whatever? How do they actually use this sort of small business capability that you guys been able to develop?
Yeah, it's the challenges that they face are numerous. And again, these are just little tools that we put in their toolbox so they can solve everyday problems from stateside when their operations here stateside or when they're deployed. One of the biggest ones that we've come across was when we first started doing our 3D printing classes. One of the problems that some Marines were facing was there's a tool for servicing the firing pin on a grenade launcher. And that tool commonly goes missing. And what's their solution? Carry another tube. That's an extra 100 pounds or something like that. And that's a bad solution. So somebody got ideas like, well, why don't I use a 3D printer to make a plastic tool? Well, I mean, it's going to can't be metal, so it has to be built bigger, stronger. So take some of the design principles and then make a much denser 3D print so that you can have it be strong and robust. And now all of a sudden you make a tool. And
they can actually make a tool in the field with their things and actually replace the piece that they need to have, as opposed to carrying all this extra stuff, and actually have it work in whatever device they're trying to use it in. Well, that's practical use. Now, let me ask you something else about your company. You guys work with any of the like the STTR or other sort of research programs that each one of the agencies have, or people who are creating innovative things that allow a particular government agency to solve a problem that they want to solve, and the product's also viable in the commercial market space? Have you guys been in that arena at all?
Well, we've been trying to get SBIR and STTR for a time. Unfortunately, we haven't been quite fortunate yet, but we do team with any organization that is neighboring to any of the Department of Defense folks. We play with everybody, honestly. We just want to get to that. We want to get to that quick solution fast. We don't want to do the typical thing of you throw requirements over a fence and then you wait a year and then you might see something. We want to just start and involve the person that has that problem in the problem making and the problem solving process. So
you guys sort of have an agile way of your developing uses of what it is that you do. And basically the folks who are out there that didn't know what SBIR, which I mentioned, it was SBIR/TTR. It's a small business innovative research program where the government, whether it's DOD or civilian agency, actually pay people to solve problems as long as a problem that they're solving has commercial viability. And also, the cool part about it is they get to keep the intellectual property and use it any way they want to. So I know you guys sound like you're almost what you do is almost made for that. But let me ask you a little bit about the educational piece. When you talked about STEM teachers and other folks like that, how do you guys do that part? That must be interesting in a lot of the capabilities you can bring into high schools and other places. What about that?
Well, the last time we did this, it was with a group of teachers from Colorado, and they were very interested in updating their curriculum, and they wanted makerspaces. And we built actually physically, I can't remember what the count is. It's somewhere between 20 and 30 spaces, whether they're mobile or they're fixed, whether they're in the country or outside of the country. It's definitely something that we're used to. And so we brought in these teachers to here in Virginia. It's before we had a space. So we were at a facility called Tech Shop before it closed down. And it's the week-long principle of show them a bunch of different interesting tech and how it applies to stuff and how you can actually use it. And then at the end of that, we challenged them with it was an autonomous robot that would follow a certain color. So you'd make a 3D printed block out of a color that your interest, train the robot on that color, and it would follow you and carry all your books. And they came so close to turning around and getting that to function. And then we went out to Colorado and then advised them by looking at their space and saying, okay, these are the tools you can fit. This is the configurations for how to have a makerspace. And then what kind of projects can you run for your kids inside those makerspaces?
Wow, that's interesting, because a lot of kids, where they go on to get a college degree, or they go into some sort of vocational study, or there's a lot of technical certificate programs or many other. I mean, this thing actually applies to whether or not you're in tech or not in tech. I mean, you could be doing things as it's almost impossible to escape tech, whether you're going to be working in the auto industry or you're a carpenter or you're a plumber. Technology is in all of that. So just finding innovative ways where people can take advantage of that, especially people on different tracks. So, I mean, that's very interesting. So what else have you guys been doing? I mean, I'm looking over here at your thing again, and you don't have to just talk about your company, man. Tell me a little bit about you personally. Are you married? Have kids? You got a wife?
No, married, just two. I'm not married, just two cats.
Okay, all right.
I had to shut the door, otherwise the cats would be in here all over all the computer equipment.
I've had plenty of people, cats and dogs, on this show. I just want to let you know. So at this point, no significant other, just your cats and just you doing what you do. So that's fantastic too. I always try to ask people, when you're trying to relax and just chilling out, what do you like to do, man? Are you doing technology stuff? What are you doing?
Well, there's a couple different things. Love to cook and love to eat what I'm cooking. Definitely been trying a lot of stuff. Love to cycle.
Okay.
The photography is a big thing too.
Yeah, you did mention that.
Yeah, I did. Got a little. I felt like I probably should have done a little bit more restful things on my weekends instead of go to I don't know how many hundreds of weddings, but I got free cake, so there we go.
Okay.
It was very good. It was got to see both the artistic and the business side of photography too, and that's what was really valuable about that one photographer I was working with. Love to hike, love to camp. It's been probably too long since I've done my last big hike. I think the last one I did was in Gila National Forest in southwestern New Mexico for 3 days or 4 days, and it was like 43 miles. It was good. It was good.
That's a hike, man. So it's like an Appalachian Trail journey, man. That's a whole lot of, hey, but that's kind of cool, man. I enjoy the outdoors too. So what do you think, civic mining? What other stuff are you involved in? Any other aspirations beyond you being a small business person? Any other things that you like to find yourself getting involved in? You know, this is the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live. We ask the question.
Well, definitely want to be active. So I was doing some postcarding during the last election cycle for midterms. I was knocking on doors for Connolly. I was at the Springfield Dems booth at multiple polling locations for both early voting and during election day. And, you know, I decided that I don't want the volunteering just to be my only option. I want to actually help Springfield have a better voice. So I've decided to run for Springfield supervisor in 2023.
So you're not only doing stuff, working at the polls and helping other people get elected, you've actually decided you're going to maybe throw, or not maybe, it sounds like you said you're going to throw your hat into the ring and try to run for supervisor chair, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. I mean, I love the first portion of your show. Like, it was just really touching on how people have their option to vote. And I think that's really important. And how does that happen is through good leadership, agreeing that there should be a level set, because right now, if you vote in one state, you're not getting the same kind of voting experience that you are in another state. You might be more free to vote in one state than you are in another. And that's just not, we need to normalize this. We need to make sure that voter suppression laws are not being, just popping up left and right on people need to have the same rights guaranteed across the country.
Absolutely, man. You kind of hit the nail on the head that's what's so important across local, state, and federal activity for people having their voting rights. But listen, man, this is interesting. I heard something about what you said you wanted to do. So that's very interesting. You're starting at a local level. You're trying to do some things there. I congratulate you on that. You deserve an applause, and whenever somebody's doing stuff and they need applause, I like to make sure they get it. So get involved, folks. Deserve all the love you can get, because a lot of people are not doing that, man. I'm very happy to hear that you're going to get out there and throw your hat in the ring. That's fantastic. And
it's really exciting, because I think local office can do big impacts. So
they do have big impacts, extremely big impacts. So how long have tell us a little more about your stay here? You're obviously in Fairfax County is where you're from, and you've been in Virginia since you got out of school, or what?
No, out of school. That took a very long trip, but I've been in the area since 2013. After I came back from Afghanistan, it seems about right. And it's a mix of living in Maryland and living in Virginia. So I'm in the Springfield district, pretty close to Fairfax County Parkway and Rolling. I've got a great park right next to me, so I'm really excited about that. And that's one thing that's actually really, Fairfax County has great parks, great outdoors experiences. I really applaud that.
Beautiful parks. I love the fact that the residents of Fairfax County love their parks, their county parks, and of course you have your state parks. It's just, if you want things to do outside and recreational stuff, you can get it in Fairfax County, along with a good education for your kids. So I'd love to hear more about you on your trail as you look into running for supervisor. So we'd love to have you on again to hear a little more about that. So I know that's probably something that's just getting started for you. But let me ask you this. Have you moved full swing into that, or you're just sort of starting down the road from a campaign perspective?
Fully launched, got a website, got a video out, been fundraising for a little bit of time. Now that midterms have ended, it's now trying to, because I really wanted to focus on helping people get elected back to their office, or hopefully, and Senate. Wow, great news there.
So don't be bashful, man. Tell people what your what's your website and things that you have for the office you're thinking about running?
Absolutely. So it's firstname.lastname.com, albertvega.com. Go ahead and check it out. You can see some of the things I'm interested in, and we're getting literature printed out soon. I'm going to start knocking doors soon, because Springfield gained a couple of precincts, and definitely want to welcome them to Springfield and tell them, hey, welcome. Love to hear, your thoughts. Want to hear from, the average citizens. What's on your mind for the county?
So your website is www.albertvega.com, not Albert for whatever. That's just straight up, right?
Albert Vega.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and show a little bit of that love too. There it is, man. I react quickly. See my production skills. So folks that's out there, if you want to find out a little more about Albert Vega, from beyond being a federal contractor and all the great stuff he's talking about that Building Momentum does, he's also out there looking to run for one of the 9 magisterial supervisor positions in Fairfax County. In this case, I believe that's Springfield District.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there you go. So you heard it. I don't know whether you heard it here first, but you heard it here too. So, hey, well, congratulations to you. Thank you for, doing that. We need people to be actively involved, and we'd love to have you come back and tell us more about how that's going for you further on into the process. Let me go ahead and ask you a question that I ask all people who come on the show, but I'm not going to ask that question first. But first, I'm going to ask you this. Man, that sounds kind of jumbled. Okay, folks, we're not going to cut that out. You're just going to look and say, what the heck is Mark talking about? I don't understand that question at all. Here's what the question is. The question is to you is, that was a good way to put this, Albert. What made you decide, other than what you just said about 5 minutes ago, to get involved in the political arena as a small business person?
Oh, that's a great question. And we've been, so building momentum is one portion of what we do. Mm-hmm. We also have a nonprofit called Athena Rapid Response. And so what we do with that is we reach out to communities in need. And some of those communities and needs are, communities that have been devastated by hurricanes. We've been to at least 3 different locations, either in the country or outside of the country, helping people problem solve and even teaching people how to solve some of their own problems after disaster. And we even helped our local community during the pandemic. We were working to make masks, make contact tracing badges for a school in South Dakota. We were making lots of different technologies to even detect UVC and emit UVC so that people can attempt to sanitize objects. And, we even ended up making desks for people who didn't have the money to buy desks. And the neat thing about these desks is they were 2 sheets of plywood. We used some of our computer controlled machinery to make something that just is assembled without tools. And so you don't have to go buy tools. You don't need to have them. And it adjusts to kids of different size or as they grow. Because right now, I mean, you were just talking about the pandemic and please go get your shots. We're still kind of struggling with this is, people didn't have the time or people didn't have the finances to go out and buy 3 desks for their kids while they have to school at home. And we made, I think we made over 200 of these and distributed them just to people. We had wood donated to us and hours donated to us from, I think, the Carpenters Union. And it's great. So we've been serving those communities. And I just realized, you know what, I want to serve in public service. I want to serve my community now. And it's just made sense. I think we could have a better voice in our leadership. I think we need to definitely focus on our housing. We need to focus on our environment. There's just so many things that we need to be looking at. And I just really want to hear from people in Springfield. What are their concerns? And just listen to them and, help Springfield grow.
That's fantastic, man. It's not like you have been putting that electrical engineering knowledge to good use. So you have not been sitting on your hands. You have been looking to try to go out and create the world's next best app and become a gazillionaire. You look like you've been putting your knowledge and gifts out there in order to make a better place for everyone to live, not just so that you can make a lot of resources yourself. Hey, listen, I'm not against making money. This is a small business caucus show live. So we're definitely we're capitalists. We do make money, but you're actually doing this from a nonprofit perspective. You're actually trying to take some of those services and knowledges that you gained from school and from your own company and to now throw your hat into the ring, helping to work from a civic perspective, running for office. So, man, I have nothing but impressive applause. And you're not, you got no gray hair, man. So it sounds like
it's coming somewhere in there. It's
around So this is fantastic, man, to hear folks who are at your stage in life who are definitely saying, hey, I want to get some things done now. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Now, your family's from Texas. What part of Texas are you? Are you from El Paso where you went to college or what?
Grew up in El Paso, and instead of going away to college, my parents went away for me. So my mom and my stepdad left to go somewhere else. My dad stayed in El Paso. I spent time about 5 years there because I did a co-op at Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California. ended up
Okay.
going there somewhere between 3 and 5 times overall.
Which lab were you at in Pasadena?
Jet Propulsion Lab.
Oh, Jet Propulsion Lab. I was thinking a particular institution, but go ahead. You're talking private sector government.
Yeah, and it's a part of JPL is kind of interesting because they use the name that gets them the best benefits, and whether it's Caltech, NASA, or JPL on its own, they just but JPL is pretty much responsible for every non-manned space flight that goes up.
Right. Yeah. But okay, I got you. Being an old Lockheed Martin guy for 20 years, I get it. Okay. So no more to be said there. Well, let me move to what I always do when I come to the end of the thing. I want to ask you a specific question about voting rights. I just want you to explain to people how important it is to voting rights are to the country, and just sort of give your
Mark, did I lose you?
What I did was, you didn't hear my question. I apologize.
I got half of the question.
Producer too, and half of the whole question was before my lousy production skills kicked in. This was so great about this live show, and I don't cut out any bloopers. Well, sometimes, but most times I don't, and that's another one. I cut myself out before I finished the question. That's me doing bad production. But my question was to you. I wanted you to talk a little bit about voting rights, because you said something about 10 minutes ago I thought was really important. And I always kind of like to catch people saying that with a nice little graphic frame around. So go ahead and do your thing. I'm going to take myself out of the stream, and you're going to talk about the importance of voting rights. Give me your spiel.
Yeah, again, I just from what I echoed earlier, I can't overstress how important they are in uniformizing them across the entire country. Because again, I feel like, I mean, the options that we've had here in Virginia are great. How many days we have for early voting, for options for voting, and I feel fortunate. I know that there's still room for improvement, but not everybody has those options. I feel like a lot of the lines that I saw either voting day or in election day or in early voting were so short, but you hear people are in line for 3 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. We need to come to some kind of agreement that puts everybody on a level playing field. We can't have somebody's voting freedoms be different in one state than they are in another. And until Congress does stuff and all of our voices get loud enough, we need to demand these things. Very important.
I really like to hear you say that. Fantastic words on that. I want to make a little clip out of that, put it out there, let people hear it. Voting rights are extremely important. And that's why we've done, as I said, 76, 75, how many episodes talking about it, because we're fighting to get that done. And I think we're a little closer to getting that done. And having more people like yourself who are out there doing the positive things that you're doing really, really kind of just caps it off. But now I'm going to go to the second to the last question. If people want to get in contact with you, I've given them your website that tells about you from a civic perspective and what you want to do. Looking to run as a supervisor in Fairfax County. I've told people about your company, Building Momentum, and how to reach you there. They've seen that roll across the screen, but you've also talked about your nonprofit. I didn't create a banner for that, but I want you to repeat it again. Did you say the name of it was Athena? Was the name of your nonprofit?
Yeah, it's Athena Rapid Response, but I think it's, wow, I should really know this website. If you just do a Google search for Athena Rapid Response, you'll get it, and you'll see what we do. Yeah, will definitely pop up. And I think one of the struggles there is always finding finances to do more great work. And so it's just, it's always the struggle, right? I mean, you always want to do good stuff, but then you need a little bit of, and again, it's part of the message in this too, is like, no matter what we want to do, there's also part of a business, and we want to be able to stay in business so that we can help people. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. So are there any other social media handles or anything else you go by, how people can get to you other than your websites?
For the campaign, if you go to albertvega.com, all the social media should be right at the top. For BuildMo, definitely go to the website buildmo.com. and all the social media is there. We do a lot of interesting events. We've had a class that has been very popular. We call Wine and Welding. Learn how to weld. Learn how to weld, have a little bit of wine, learn about the safety, and then go weld a wine rack.
Fantastic.
Yeah, those are the kind of crazy type events we want to be engaging, bringing people in the community. Again, it's just we want to, even though we're a small business and yes, we need to make profit, we do want to bring in and engage the community.
Fantastic. Well, let me go with the last question I always leave on. And that question is, if you were king for a day and you had the magic scepter where anything you say is going to get done, what would be the first thing that you would do?
Do I get brownie points for voting rights?
Yes, you do. Everybody gets brownie points for voting rights.
There we go. Then done. There. Oh man, that is such a hard one. I think one of the things too, it's just so many different things. Definitely the scientific background also comes into, because I think this is one thing we're going to be struggling with in the next 50 years. And it's already showing right now is a lot of our environment. And I think part of the hesitance to do anything about the environment is the cost. And so, I mean, there's just a lot I have a lot to ask from there too. So I don't know. That's just one thing that has been kind of on my mind recently. So I think that one just popped up. Definitely wave the magic wand of putting our earth back in set. And I think that, I mean, a lot of us as small businesses are trying to do the right things too. So I think the mentality is there. It's just hard sometimes with the resources. And so it's just a challenge. It's just a challenge. So.
Well, I think the environment is a great question. Of course, you threw voting rights in there, so you can't lose with that. But they got to have a place to live. People have to be able to drink clean water, eat clean food, have sustainable energy, and all those sort of things. So the environment is a great thing, and I don't think there was a whole lot of people who would agree with you on that, who may put it above voting rights. Now, that's just me. I'm a voting rights guy, but hey, I got to breathe too. So. So that's fantastic. So I really want to tell you, it's been a fantastic time talking with you. Fantastic time having you on the show. We definitely want to have you back on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live, because we're always glad to have people like you, and especially you're a local guy. So one of the things I want to say to you, good luck in your campaign, good luck with your company, and good luck with all that fantastic nonprofit stuff that you've been doing out there as we move into the end of our show. And I'm trying to do my technology while I talk, but we're getting ready to hit it now. Whenever you hear this, we're either coming on or we're leaving, but here it is. Welcome and thank you for being on the show, Albert Vega, telling us about building momentum, telling us about you running for office, and also the great nonprofit stuff you've been doing. Looking forward to having you back, Albert. Thank you for
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Take care, my friend.
Appreciate it.
Okay, see you later. Oh yeah, man, I love this Bob Marley stuff, man. I gotta get my technology working here. Here we go. Ooh, okay.